Welcome to this 1-hour IELTS vocabulary masterclass. This masterclass is going to help you achieve a high level on your IELTS, and everything you learn is going to help you impress the examiner. Welcome back to JForrest English. Of course, I'm Jennifer. Now let's get started. First, in this masterclass, you'll learn over 30 phrases that you can use for your IELTS speaking. And you'll also learn some bonus phrases that you can use for clarification. Let's get started. Of course, on the IELTS, they're going to ask you, where do you live? You can say, I was born and raised in Winnipeg. That's where I was born and raised. Did you know that? I was born and raised. To be born and raised in. Now here your verb is to be, so of course you need to conjugate it in the past simple because it's a completed past action. I was born and raised in, and then you can state your city or your country. Now don't worry about taking notes because I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can look in the description for the link. You can add on to this to make it sound more complex, to make you sound more advanced. I was born and raised in Winnipeg, but now I live in Ottawa. Go even further and say, I've lived here for over 10 years. Now notice I used the present perfect. You can also use the present perfect continuous only for the verbs live, work, and study. And this is for an action that started in the past and continues until now. So in the present perfect continuous, I've been living here for over 10 years. You can use for plus the specific number of years. You can even say 4 years, several years, many years, a number of years. All of those are possibilities. Now let's move on to tell me about your work. You can say, I'm an engineer. I know this is a very simple sentence, but most students get it wrong because they forget the article. You must use an article before your job title. Most likely you're going to use a or an, but it is possible to use the article the. This is when there is only one position in the organization and you have that one position. For example, I'm the executive director. So there's only one executive director and that's me. Now, if we use the, it's more common to explain what the organization is or what the company is. But if you include just your job title with a or an, you can, but you don't need to. But if you use the, make sure you state your organization. Now add to this and add a general statement about your specific job. Being an engineer is rewarding. Notice here, being starts the sentence because it's a gerund statement. Gerund statements will absolutely make you sound more advanced. You could say, I love using my analytical skills to solve complex problems. Love is a verb of preference, so you need the verb of preference plus a gerund. Love using. You could say, I enjoy collaborating with my team. Enjoy is a verb of preference, so you need the gerund. I enjoy collaborating with my team and brainstorming unique solutions to complex problems. So sure, you could say brainstorming solutions to problems, but adding adjectives makes you sound more advanced. You just mentioned something positive about your work. Why not make a contrasting statement and start with however? This is a transition word that we use to make a contrast, and using transition words will make you sound so advanced. However, being an engineer also has its challenges. So before we had positives about being an engineer, however, and now a negative about being an engineer, a contrast. So now you can share one of those challenges, specifically another transition word to make you sound advanced. Specifically, I work around the clock to meet tight deadlines. To work around the clock is an expression, and using expressions really shows you understand the language more at an advanced native level. And of course, to work around the clock, you can just imagine you work continuously, you work non-stop. Now let's talk about hobbies. You can begin with a gerund statement that expresses your opinion on hobbies. In my opinion, having hobbies is integral to living a fulfilling life. So our gerund statement is having hobbies is integral to, but then I just added on to that by expressing my opinion. So let's review some opinion words. Of course, in my opinion, in my view, from my perspective. Notice here, from my perspective. Personally, I think that. Have at least 4 different opinion words you can use these for in your vocabulary when you go for your IELTS. Now let's get back to hobbies. You made your general statement, your gerund statement beginning with an opinion word. Now you can state your specific hobby. I'm an avid hiker, or maybe I'm an avid cyclist, guitar player, tennis player, whatever your hobby is. So here the structure is to be an avid, and then you need a noun. And this means you have a strong interest, passion, or enthusiasm for that activity. Now you can make a gerund statement about why you enjoy this activity. Hiking gives me the opportunity to disconnect from my devices and enjoy the beauty of nature. Now notice that the gerund statement started with the verb hiking. You can also start a gerund statement with the noun. For example, guitar. Guitar gives me the opportunity to. You could say playing guitar, so you're using the verb form or the noun form with guitar. Both are correct. Now let's say you don't have any hobbies. Don't worry, you can still answer this question in a very advanced way. You can say, until now, my focus has been on my career. However, I'm considering taking up, and then an activity, taking up drawing. So notice we have our present perfect. My focus has been, because the action started in the past and continues until now. Take up is the phrasal verb we use specifically with hobbies and activities to mean start. And notice consider plus gerund. I'm considering, that's in the present continuous. I'm considering taking up. Take is in the gerund because consider plus gerund. You could also say, however, I'd love to take up drawing. The expression here is I would love, and then infinitive. Perhaps it's simpler to remember and it still sounds advanced, so feel free to use this alternative. Now you can still add on a gerund statement about drawing, but use the future simple because you're not doing the activity right now. Drawing will give me the opportunity to disconnect. You could say, I'm confident that, or I'm hopeful that drawing will give me the opportunity to disconnect. You will sound very advanced. Now let's move on to tell me about your family. You can say, I'm from a close-knit family. Close-knit. Notice that pronunciation, close-knit. This is an adjective that describes the family. Now, this is the same as saying, my family and I are very close. My family and I. This is the subject we. My family and I are very close. You can say everyone in my family gets along because everyone is conjugated as a singular. Everyone gets along really well, or use extremely well to sound more advanced. Here's a great expression. Everyone says, I take after my mom in looks, and I take after my dad in personality. When you take after someone, it means that you resemble them physically. So if you have a photo of you and your mom and people say, oh, I see the similarities, you take after your mom because your mom came first, and maybe your mom takes after your grandmother, etc. But for personality, you can use this as well. So maybe your dad is very funny and you are very funny, so you take after your dad in personality. A great phrasal verb to use on the IELTS to sound very advanced. Now let's move on to talking about travel. You can say, I'd love, I would love, I'd love the opportunity to see Egypt, to travel to. Notice, travel to Egypt, but see Egypt, visit Egypt. So know when certain verbs require additional prepositions. Travel to a location, visit a location. If I could travel anywhere, I'd choose Egypt. This is our second conditional because it's hypothetical. And notice we have modal plus base verb. Don't use the infinitive, modal plus base verb. Of course, you can use a gerund statement. Visiting Egypt is at the top of my list. Imagine you have a list of places you want to visit and Egypt is at the top. You can make this more advanced by using the present perfect. Traveling to Egypt has been at the top of my list for as long as I can remember. An action that started in the past and continues until now. Now, why not use an opinion word? From my perspective, the pyramids are one of our world's greatest treasures. So you're sharing an opinion that reinforces why you want to visit Egypt. You can go on and say, and I'd revel in the opportunity to see them with my own eyes. The expression is to revel in the opportunity and then your infinitive, to see them. This is a very advanced way of saying, I would thoroughly enjoy seeing the pyramids. Now, as a bonus, let me share some phrases that you can use when you want to clarify your answer. So you're answering and you realize that the words aren't coming out very well. You can say, what I'm trying to say is, and then you can change your thought. You can express your thought a different way. What I mean is, what I'm getting at is, what I'm trying to get at is, to put it another way, in other words, and then you communicate your idea. I suggest memorizing 4 of these because they will be very helpful when you're taking your IELTS. Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, the movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson. Amazing job. Now let's move on and you're going to learn 50 plus transition words. And these transition words will help you take a simple idea and make it more complex, more advanced, more C1. Let's get started. So what exactly are transition words? Well, transition words are individual words or groups of words, phrases, that you can use to organize your ideas and to show connection between your ideas. They're commonly used in academic or formal writing, but you shouldn't limit their use to just that because you can absolutely use them in your spoken English, and you should use them in your spoken English to sound very advanced and professional. And if you watch to the end of this video, I'm going to share how you can use transition words to expand your ideas and to take a really simple idea and be able to talk on that idea for longer using transition words. So stay right to the end. So let's get started. You're going to learn over 50 transition words in this lesson. Don't feel overwhelmed. Just add them to your vocabulary as you go. Our first group of transition words are used to show cause and effect, causation. So here I have two separate ideas. I spilled my coffee, I changed my shirt. Now this is where we can use a transition word to combine these ideas together and to show the relationship between them. I spilled my coffee, as a result, I changed my shirt. Cause and effect. Here are the transition words in this category, and they're listed from most formal to least formal. So you can take a screenshot of this. Consequently, hence, accordingly, thus, for that reason, as a result, therefore, and so, since, because, due to. Now the example I gave you, I spilled my coffee, as a result, I changed my shirt. This is a casual statement. It might sound a little odd, perhaps out of place, to use a very formal transition word such as consequently in such a common everyday speech. I spilled my coffee, consequently, I changed my shirt. You could absolutely say it, it's grammatically correct, but the choice of transition word is just a little too formal. So do not think that formal is the best, and you absolutely should use formal. You should use formal when your ideas are more formal. They're more academic, they're more professional in a business context. Let's look at a business context. The project is over budget. We have to cut costs. So again, we'll show our cause and effect. We'll use a transition word to combine these ideas. And because it's a more formal context, I can use a more formal transition word. The project is over budget, hence, consequently, thus, we have to cut costs. Our next group of transition words is chronology. This is how events are related based on when they occur. So think of time. Here are three events. I went to the store, I worked out, I made dinner. Now, of course, we can add first, second, third, first, next, finally. That's chronology, and it instantly sounds more organized and more advanced when you add the transition words. So let's review the transition words in this category. First, firstly, to start, to begin, at the beginning, at the start. Second, secondly, after, afterwards, next, then, subsequently, later. Third, thirdly, after, afterwards, next, then, subsequently, later, finally, lastly, last but not least. Now notice that for the second and third events, many of the transition words are the same. You can use after, after for the second and third event. Or you can use next, next for the second and third and fourth and fifth event. But you might want to avoid that so you don't sound repetitive using the same transition word again and again. So you can use next, then, subsequently, finally. So you can use the different transition words just to show off your advanced vocabulary. Our next category of transition words is to show contrast when you have two opposing ideas. Let me give you two ideas. I love ice cream. I'm lactose intolerant. So can you see how these two ideas are in opposition? I love ice cream is great. It's a really positive thing. But I'm lactose intolerant. That's negative, and it also means that I can't eat ice cream. So those ideas are in opposition. So we can use our contrasting transition words. However, although, though, but. I love ice cream, but I'm lactose intolerant. Same thing, the transition words are listed from most formal to least formal. Again, you could say, I love ice cream, however, I'm lactose intolerant. But again, these ideas are quite simple, so you probably want a more simple transition word. Our next category of transition words is addition of similar ideas. I love ice cream, I love cake. It's adding a similar idea because they're both in the same category, which is desserts or sweets. The most common transition words from most formal to least formal in this category are furthermore, moreover, further, additionally, in addition, also, and. I love ice cream and I love cake. Obviously, you know that one. So why not try to advance your vocabulary by using in addition? I love ice cream. In addition, I love cake. Now let's talk about generality. This is when things are true most of the time. The most common transition words in this category are in general, generally, generally speaking, by and large, for the most part, most of the time, more often than not, usually, typically, mostly. So let's take an example. Our meetings are very productive. Now, of course, I'm sure there's one or two meetings that aren't very productive, but most of the time, in general, generally speaking, our meetings are very productive. Now let's look at the category of examples. There are really only three main transition words. For example, as an example, for instance. This software has really helped us. Now it can make your point a lot stronger or help you expand on your idea by adding an example. This software has really helped us. For example, as an example, for instance, it reduced our error rate by 40%. Our next category is emphasis. This category is used to make a point stronger by adding more supporting information. Let's take a simple example. I love pie. Now, what if I wanted to make this point stronger? I could say, it's my favorite dessert. I love pie. In fact, it's my favorite dessert. I love pie. As a matter of fact, it's my favorite dessert. These are the only two transition words that are commonly used to add emphasis. And finally, conclusion transition words. Notice I just used a transition word. And finally, that is a conclusion transition word. Now, of course, in this category, we use these transition words when we want to end what we're saying, end our speech, end our presentation. Here are the most common transition words listed from most formal to least formal. In conclusion, to conclude, to summarize, in sum, all things considered, finally, overall, ultimately, in the end, to wrap up, to sum up, all in all. So let's say I'm ending my presentation at work and I want my colleagues to remember one very important fact. And that fact is, if we want to remain competitive, we have to invest in automation. Now, to let my colleagues know that this is the last point I'm going to make, my final point, I'm going to add a conclusion transition word. Ultimately, if we want to remain competitive, we have to invest in automation. So now you have 50 plus transition words to help you communicate your ideas in a very professional and organized way. Before you go, let me share a bonus tip with you. You can use transition words to help you expand on your ideas. So let's take one idea. In general, our meetings are very productive. Now, I can pick any category of transition word to expand on this idea. I could add a contrast. However, they usually run over time. So this is an opposing idea. Now, let me give an example of my last point to add emphasis and to expand even more. For example, today our meeting was scheduled to end at 11 and it went until 11:17. So let's expand on this even more. What was the effect of the meeting running over by 17 minutes? As a result, I was late for a meeting with a client. Were there any other effects? If there were, I could use an addition of a similar idea transition word. Additionally, I had to work through lunch to catch up. As you can see, transition words are an excellent way to expand on your ideas. So now it's your turn. In the comments below, why don't you take 3 or more transition words and start with one idea and then just pick any other category and expand on that idea with 3 or more transition words. So you can do that in the comments below. You are doing so great. Now on your IELTS, you are going to share your opinion. You've already learned some opinion words, but let me fill your vocabulary. Now you're going to learn over 50 opinion words. And these opinion words will help you share your ideas in a natural but advanced C1 way. Are you ready to add 50 plus phrases to your vocabulary to confidently share your opinions? Of course, you can use this when you're in meetings at work, you're giving a presentation, you're talking to some friends, you're going to a networking event, you're at a party. So you can use this in more formal and informal situations as well. Now let's get started with first sharing your personal opinion. Let's say you're in a work meeting and you have an idea you want to share with everyone. We should hire a marketing expert to build our website. You can absolutely say that, but you can sound more professional, more advanced if you use an opinion word. Now, there are many different phrases you can use to share your personal opinion. I recommend starting with 2 to 3 that you like the most, and then you can add more once you get comfortable with them so you have variety and you're not always using the same one. Here's the list. In my opinion, as far as I'm concerned, from my perspective, from my point of view, personally, I think that. In my view, I'd say that. I believe that. I strongly, firmly believe that. I'm convinced that. There's no doubt in my mind that. I feel that. In my mind, it seems to me that. So let's take our idea again. We should hire a marketing expert to build our website. As far as I'm concerned, we should hire a marketing expert. In my opinion, in my mind, personally, I think that we should hire a marketing expert. So you can use any one of these, and remember, variety is key. You don't always want to say, in my opinion. You can absolutely use that, but you want to have variety. Now let's talk about agreeing with an opinion. So you're in a meeting and a colleague says, we should postpone the conference. Or your colleague used an opinion word and said, I firmly believe that we should postpone the conference. Now let's say that you agree with your colleague. What can you say? Well, again, here's a big list. Start with 1 to 2 and add them as you get comfortable. I agree. I agree with you. I think so too. That's a good point. You're right. Definitely, absolutely. I second that. I couldn't have said it better myself. I couldn't agree more. We're on the same page. You hit the nail on the head. So your colleague says, from my perspective, we should postpone the conference. And you say, I couldn't agree more. We should postpone the conference. You're right. We should postpone the conference. Absolutely, we should postpone the conference. I agree with you. Now let's say your colleague shared an opinion that started with, I don't think. I don't think we should postpone the conference. Personally, I don't think we should postpone the conference. We have one very specific phrase that you can use when you want to agree with a negative opinion. Do you know what that is? In my mind, I don't think we should postpone the conference. Neither do I. Neither do I. You only use this when you're agreeing with I don't think. Neither do I. Now let's talk about disagreeing with an opinion. So you're in a meeting and your colleague says, in my mind, we should look for a new supplier. Now you don't agree. What can you say? You can say, I disagree with you. I'm afraid I disagree. On the contrary, I understand where you're coming from, but I respect your opinion, but that's a good point. However, I see your point, but I have a different perspective. I think, can I share my opinion? That's one way of looking at it, but have you considered the fact that? Now, the first one I shared, I disagree with you, is probably the least commonly used because it sounds argumentative. And we generally want to say this softly to someone. So it's way more common to say, I'm afraid. I'm afraid I disagree with you. It makes it a lot softer. Or you could acknowledge that I respect your opinion, but I don't think that's a good idea. I respect your opinion, but I think we should keep our supplier. My personal favorite in this category is I understand where you're coming from, but, and then you share your opinion or whatever information you like. I understand where you're coming from. This is another way of saying I respect your opinion. I understand where you're coming from, but right now isn't the best time to change our suppliers because it's our busiest time of year. We should wait until Q4. And remember, you can add your personal opinion words as well. From my perspective, in my mind, from my point of view, we should wait until Q4. So you can absolutely combine these different opinion words together. Now let's talk about sharing a general opinion. So something that most people would agree with. Here's a statement. Repetition is key when you're learning any new skill. Now, I personally believe this, but it's not my opinion per se. This is just a commonly held opinion by most people, by many different people. So here are some general opinion words you can use. It's said that, it's believed that, I've heard that, it's considered that, it's generally accepted that, most agree that, some say that, it goes without saying that, researchers, experts suggest that. So I could say it's generally accepted that repetition is key when you're learning any new skill. And personally, I agree. And personally, I couldn't have said it better myself. So you absolutely can share a general opinion, but then agree with that general opinion using one of the phrases you've already learned. Or maybe you want to disagree with this statement. Well, then of course you can use one of the phrases to disagree. On the contrary, repetition isn't that important. I'm afraid I disagree. Repetition isn't that important. In my mind, and then you can share your opinion. And finally, let's talk about how to ask someone for their opinion. So let's say I shared a general opinion. Most agree that repetition is key when learning a new skill. And I want to ask for your opinion on this specific topic. I can say, do you agree? What's your opinion? What do you think? What are your thoughts? What's your view? How do you see the situation? What's your take on it? What about you? How about you? Has that been your experience? What has your experience been? Are we on the same page? Is that something you would support too? So if you're talking to someone who's currently learning a new skill, it could be really interesting to ask them, has that been your experience? What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree? So now you have 50 plus phrases that you can use in any situation, formal, informal, professional meeting, casual party with friends, to talk about opinions, because everybody loves sharing their opinion, right? So now you get to share your opinion. I want you to share either a personal opinion or a general opinion related to the subject of languages in the comments below. And the fun part, you can look in the comments and then you can reply back to the other students and you can agree or you can disagree, or maybe you can even ask someone more information about their opinion. Try to use the different opinion words that you learned in this lesson. So have fun in the comments below. You have already learned so much. Now let's talk about your daily routine. And we're going to transform a boring and basic daily routine into an advanced C1 daily routine. Let's go. Let's talk about Mark's daily routine. Say hello to Mark. Mark is a manager, he's married, and he has 2 young kids. Let me tell you about Mark's daily routine at an advanced C1 level, and after I'll explain all the advanced vocabulary and grammar that you can add to your speech. The alarm rings at 6:30 a.m., signaling the beginning of Mark's day. With precision, he orchestrates the morning routine, ensuring his 2 energetic children are dressed and fed. As the aroma of coffee fills the air, Mark reviews his schedule, preparing for the day ahead. Notice how this daily routine started in a very advanced way, almost a poetic way. The alarm rings at 6:30 a.m. Most students would simply say, I wake up at 6:30 a.m. Or in this case, Mark wakes up at 6:30 a.m. But this is very beginner and boring. The alarm rings at 6:30 a.m. That sounds so advanced. Why don't you try that? You can say my alarm instead of the alarm. You can make it possessive. My alarm rings, present simple conjugated with my alarm, it. My alarm rings at. Put that in the comments and share what time your alarm rings, which is an alternative to saying I wake up at. My alarm rings at. As for me, my alarm rings at 5:30 a.m., signaling the beginning of Mark's day. Notice here we have signaling in the ing form. This is a present participle. It adds description by showing the result of the action. With precision. Precision means that there was a high level of accuracy. This is an advanced noun. You could also say with ease, because you want to talk about your daily routine as being easy, with ease. He orchestrates the morning routine. Again, notice the vocabulary is at that more advanced C1 level. To orchestrate means to organize, arrange, or coordinate. And notice those verb conjugations because we're in the present simple and it's being conjugated with the subject he. He, she, it, you need to add that s. With precision, he orchestrates the morning routine, ensuring, notice here another present participle. Again, it describes the action, ensuring his 2 energetic children are dressed and fed. As the aroma of coffee fills the air. Notice here, aroma is a more advanced way of saying the smell of coffee, the aroma of coffee. Mark reviews his schedule, preparing another present participle, preparing for his day ahead. Let's move on. At the office, Mark transitions into his managerial role, leading a diverse team. His day is filled with back-to-back Zoom meetings and presentations. Mark excels in conveying intricate ideas during meetings and negotiations. At the office, Mark transitions into something, his managerial role. Maybe you could say, after tending to my children, I have to transition into my marketing role, or whatever your next role is. At the office, Mark transitions into his managerial role, leading a diverse team. Again, the present participle. It describes the action. His day is filled with. To be filled with something, this means to contain a lot of. Now, although contain is a more advanced vocabulary term than filled with, adding phrasal verbs, idioms, and expressions is a great way to sound more advanced, to sound more C1. So to be filled with sounds more advanced than saying contains. And back-to-back Zoom meetings and presentations. This means that as one meeting ends, another one immediately begins, back-to-back. Mark excels in explaining intricate ideas. This is a C1 or C2 sentence. A more beginner sentence would be saying, Mark is very good at communicating complex ideas. But notice that grammar difference. To excel in something or doing something, or to be good at. So you need a different preposition. Let's move on. As the workday concludes, Mark races against the clock to attend his children's extracurricular activities. Soccer practice, music lessons, and art classes become integral parts of their routine. In the car rides between activities, Mark cherishes the moments of connection with his children. As the workday concludes. Concludes is a more advanced way of saying as the workday ends. As the workday concludes, Mark races against the clock. This is an expression, to race against the clock. This is when you have to work quickly to complete all your tasks within a limited amount of time, to race against the clock. Soccer practice, music lessons, and art classes become integral parts of their daily routine. Integral means essential or necessary. It's a more advanced term. Let's look at this sentence. In the car ride between activities, Mark cherishes the moments of connection with his children. This is a complex sentence. The first part is a dependent clause, which means it is not a complete sentence. But if you add it to an independent clause, then it becomes a complex sentence. Using complex sentences is an integral part of sounding more advanced, fluent, and C1. Let's move on. Following dinner, the family reunites in collective activities, whether it's a board game, a movie night, or a stroll in the neighborhood. Mark, though weary from the demands of the day, revels in the simple pleasures of familial bonds. Following dinner, this is a more way of saying after dinner. The family reunites in collective activities. This is very advanced and again, almost poetic. A more B1 everyday way of saying this would be, the family spends quality time together. One of the activities is a stroll in the neighborhood. A stroll is a leisurely walk. So if there is a word, stroll, that means something else, to walk leisurely, it sounds more advanced to use the one word that communicates that idea. A stroll, a leisurely walk. Now grammatically, you can use to go for a stroll. Following dinner, we went for a lovely stroll in the park. The verb is go, so it's conjugated in the past simple, went. You can also take a stroll. Following dinner, we took the past simple of take. Following dinner, we took a lovely stroll in the park. Both are common and equally used. Let's learn about how Mark ends his daily routine. As the clock inches towards bedtime, Mark carves out a brief period for personal reflection by reading, meditating, or journaling. As he slips into his comfortable bed, he savors the tranquility that descends upon his home. As the clock inches towards bedtime, this is very advanced, it sounds poetic. As bedtime approaches, clearly sounds more intermediate, more basic than as the clock inches towards bedtime. Mark carves out a brief period for personal reflection by, and then you have your activities. By reading, by meditating, or by journaling. You could say, I start my day by, and then whatever the activity is. I start my day by working out for 30 minutes. I end my day. I conclude my day to sound more advanced. I conclude my day by meditating for 15 minutes. It's an integral part of my daily routine. As he slips into his comfortable bed, to slip into is a more advanced poetic way of saying to get into. I get into bed at 10 o'clock. I slip into my warm and comfortable bed as the clock inches towards 10 p.m. That sounds very advanced and poetic. He savors, he really enjoys. He savors the tranquility, the peace and quiet. He savors the tranquility that descends upon his home. Descends, that enters, that fills his home. A B1 student might simply say, he enjoys the quiet in his home. Now let's look at this whole sentence together, which is a complex sentence. And I want you to notice the as he, and then the other part of the sentence, he. As he X, he Y. X and Y being the activities. As I prepare my breakfast, I review my back-to-back meetings. As I is the dependent clause, which means it's incomplete. You have to connect it to an independent clause. I review my back-to-back meetings. That would be the independent clause. So this is a complex sentence, a great way to sound more advanced. Now let's move on and talk about grammar, because you absolutely need to use advanced complex sentences, grammatically correct sentences with all the vocabulary that you're learning. I'm going to share the 5 most common verb tenses that make up over 96% of your speech. And at the end, there'll be a quiz. Let's get started. Let's review the 5 verb tenses that make up over 96% of a native speaker's speech. The 5 verb tenses are the present simple, which makes up 57.51% of speech, the past simple, which makes up 19.7%, the future simple at 8.5%, the present perfect at 6%, and the present continuous at 5.1% of a native speaker's speech. And the total of all 5 verb tenses is 96.81% of speech. So let's make sure that you feel very confident using all 5 verb tenses. And don't worry, because I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. So you can look in the description for the link to download the PDF. And at the end of this lesson, there's going to be a quiz to make sure you really understand these verb tenses. So let's start with the present simple. And pay close attention, because I correct mistakes from my advanced students in the Finally Fluent Academy. They make mistakes with the present simple almost every time they submit their practice exercises. So pay close attention. Let's review the structure. For the subjects I, you, we, and they, you add the base verb. Now for the subjects he, she, it, you add the base verb plus s or ES. And this is one of the most common mistakes that my advanced students make, forgetting to add that S. So don't forget that S for he, she, it subjects. The present simple is used to describe routines, habits in your daily life. For example, I eat breakfast every day at 6 o'clock a.m. It's also used to describe general facts and truths. For example, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And notice I added those S's because the sun is it. He, she, it, you need those S's. It's also used for feelings, emotions, and states of beings. We are very excited for the concert tonight. Now here's one that most of my students don't use correctly, and the present simple is also used for timetable events, even if that event is in the future. For example, the train leaves at 5 a.m. tomorrow. It's very common to use an adverb of frequency with the present simple, which is one easy way that you can identify it. The most common adverbs of frequency are every day or always for 7 times a week, often, usually, or frequently for about 4 to 6 times a week, sometimes for 3 to 4 times a week, rarely or seldom for 1 to 2 times a week, and never for 0 times a week. So let's practice this just for fun. Share something silly that you never do or always do in the comments below. For example, I never brush my teeth while I'm driving. So share something silly in the comments just to have a little fun. Now let's move on to the past simple. To form the past simple, you have your subject, and then you have your base verb plus ed, or an irregular past simple verb, and there are many irregular verbs, so you simply need to memorize them. The past simple is used for an action that started and finished at a specific time in the past. For example, I went to the store yesterday. She took a shower at 8 a.m., but now it is 11 a.m., so 8 a.m. is in the past. They ordered pizza for dinner, and now it's 10 o'clock at night, so dinner is in the past. We sang all night, but I'm talking about maybe yesterday or the night before, so it's in the past. Let's review some past simple keywords so you can easily identify when you need to use this verb tense. Yesterday, last week, month, or year, in 2020, at 3:30 p.m., 4 hours ago, on Monday, on July 15th, when I graduated, or during the meeting. And remember, all of those keywords, the action started and finished in the past. Now let's talk about the future simple, another verb tense I see a lot of mistakes with. The structure is very easy. You have your subject, will, and base verb. It's the same for all subjects, which makes it easy. This verb tense is used to make predictions, but when it's based on your opinion, not facts. Argentina will win the World Cup. This is just my opinion. I don't know this as a fact. Someone else could say, I think France will win the World Cup. Notice here I added I think. It's very common to use an opinion word with the future simple. This verb tense is used for spontaneous actions or decisions, which means they were not planned in advance. For example, let's say you see a woman struggling with her grocery bags, and she has many grocery bags. You can say, I'll help you with those bags. You didn't plan this in advance. It was a spontaneous action. It's also used with promises, commitments, offers, or refusals. If you say, I'll send you the report at 5 p.m., You're making a promise or a commitment. It's like saying, I promise I'll send you the report at 5 p.m. So the other person will expect it if you use the future simple. Now let's talk about the present perfect, a verb tense that confuses a lot of students, but absolutely you must know how to use it. The structure is I, you, we, they, plus have, plus the past participle. And you simply need to memorize all the past participles. Now for the subjects he, she, it, you need to use has as your auxiliary verb and the past participle. Now, did you know that the present perfect is also used with the completed past action, but one that has a result or consequence in the present? For example, I have eaten. That is a completed past action. Now, it's common to use already, but it's not required. I have already eaten. So what's the result in the present? So now I'm not hungry. It's also used for life experience when it's an unfinished timeline. For example, she's been to Panama twice. Now, because she is alive, she can go to Panama again, so it's an unfinished time reference. Or you could say, I haven't seen that movie yet. Yet is a keyword for the present perfect, and we use it in negative sentences. And by saying yet, you're letting the person know that it's still possible for you to watch that movie in the future, so it's an unfinished time reference. Now, the present perfect is also used for an action that started in the past and continues until now, but only with 3 common verbs: live, work, and study. For example, they've lived in that house for 20 years. They still live there now, and it started in the past. It started 20 years ago. Very important point, you can't use a specific time reference with the present perfect. You must use the past simple. This is a very common mistake that I see my students make. So you can't say, I've tried sushi last week, because last week is a specific past time reference. So you would have to say, I tried sushi last week. Or you could get rid of last week and say, I've tried sushi. Let's move on to our last verb tense, the present continuous. The structure is I am plus verb in your ing form, your gerund verb. You, we, they, are plus verb in ing. Or he, she, it, is plus verb in ing. So don't forget, you have to conjugate the verb to be according to the subject. The present continuous is used for an action that is currently taking place. Right now, now. So I could say, my students are, because the subject is they, my students are watching my video right now, right? You're watching this video right now. You can also use the present continuous with the future if it's a planned action in the future. For example, he's attending the conference next month. It's in the future, but it's planned. He's attending the conference next month. Or she's performing at the World Cup in 2026. So even though it's way in the future, you can still use the present continuous if it's a planned event. An important note that you should know, because I know it might confuse students. Native speakers use the present continuous with always to stress the continuation of something negative. She is always coming to work late. So instead of saying she always comes to work late, because always is a keyword for the present simple, native speakers frequently put this in the present continuous. I don't recommend that you do that because it really depends on the context if it sounds correct or incorrect. But grammatically, it's always correct to use the present simple with always. So that's what I recommend that you do. I'm just sharing this so you don't get confused when you hear a native speaker say, she is always coming to work late. Now you know the 5 verb tenses that make up 96% of your speech. So, are you ready for your quiz to make sure you really know how to use them? Here are the questions. Hit pause and take as much time as you need, and when you're ready to continue, hit play. Here are the answers. Hit pause, review the answers, and when you're ready to continue, hit play. Wow, you are doing such a great job. We are coming to the end of our masterclass. Now, let's talk about how you can think and speak in English at the same time. Because for your IELTS speaking, you need to talk instantly. So let me help you with that. Tip number 1, surround yourself in English. You might live in a non-English speaking country. Or maybe you live in an English-speaking country. Either way, you need to make your environment as English as possible. You need to immerse yourself in the language as much as you can. And you have control over your room, your workstation, your kitchen, your bathroom. You absolutely have control over your environment. Do you know what these are? They're sticky notes, and these are your best friend when you're learning a language because you can put them all over your house. You can label objects. You can remind yourself of vocabulary that you're learning, verb structures, verb tenses. You can put them everywhere. And just seeing them, even if you don't focus on it, just seeing it quickly, your brain is processing that, remembering it, and learning it. Other easy things you can do, you can write your daily to-do list in English instead of your native language. You can change all of your devices to display in English. And you can get creative and think of many different ways that you can immerse yourself in English in your environment. But by the end of the week, I want you to go out and buy some sticky notes and start labeling one room of your house. Tip 2, think during everyday activities. There are so many activities that you do every single day that are wasted time. But you can turn that wasted time into productive time if you simply think in English as you're doing that activity. Some common wasted time activities that you do every day are working out, having a shower. What a perfect time to think in English. For me, is definitely getting ready. I always make sure I do something productive while I'm putting on my makeup, drying my hair. Otherwise, it's wasted time. Making breakfast, doing chores, and of course, commuting. Commuting is a great time to think in English. And I'm sure you spend a lot of time waiting in lines, waiting for things to finish. Waiting is the perfect time to think in English. But you're probably wondering, how can I turn commuting into productive time? Well, that leads to tip number 3, which is to make simple observations. This is such a powerful exercise because it forces you to become very present in your environment. So you'll also be practicing mindfulness at the same time, which is very good for your mental health. So as you're out in the world, maybe you're walking, commuting, waiting in line, and it's wasted time, I want you to simply look around and observe your environment. What do you see? And your goal is to make simple observations. And of course, you're doing this in English. You're thinking in English. So let's say you're at a park. You're going for a walk, or you're walking your dog, you're eating your lunch, you're at a park. You can make some simple observations. There's a big tree. The tree is green. The tree has leaves. There's a pond. There are ducks in the pond. There are mountains. The sky is blue. So turn wasted time into productive time by making simple observations, and it will force you to think in English. But let's move on to tip number 4, which is to add complexity. First of all, don't underestimate the power of simple sentences. Don't think that making a very simple sentence like the tree is green isn't helping you. It absolutely is helping you to think in English and get more comfortable thinking in English. But of course, I understand you want to add complexity. So let's talk about some ways to add complexity. One of the easiest is to add an adjective, adverb, or modifier. The palm tree has vibrant leaves. So adding vibrant makes that simple sentence sound more complex. You can share your opinion or make a general statement. In my opinion, spending time outside every day is important for our mental health. Another great way is to compare and contrast. You could say, these mountains are more impressive than the mountains near my work. So start simple and then add complexity to your simple sentences. And remember, you're doing this in English. You're thinking these thoughts in English. So you can make observations in any environment that you're in, whether it's an interesting environment like a beautiful park or a boring environment like a plain room. You can still make observations. But let's move on to tip 5, which is to use images. You can use Google Images and simply look for any style of images that you like. And if you're not sure what to search for, just search interesting images on Google Images. And you can look through the images and then find one that catches your eye. As for me, this image with the cat, of course, caught my eye. So now you're going to make simple statements, simple observations about this image. The cat is adorable. The cat is standing on a mountain. The cat looks majestic, standing on this breathtaking mountain. So remember, start simple and then add complexity as you do this exercise. And I recommend doing this for 5 to 10 minutes a day. And by doing this, you're going to turn wasted time into productive time. Tip 6, speak out loud. Until now, these tips have focused on thinking in your head. You can also write them down, like writing your to-do list in English, writing your sticky notes, but I want you to speak out loud. What I mean by that is you're producing sound that other people can hear. Right now, I'm speaking out loud because you want to gain confidence speaking as well. So thinking those simple statements and verbalizing, saying them out loud is a different skill. Now, even if you're at a beautiful park, I still want you to verbalize your statements, your observations, say them out loud. If you feel self-conscious doing this, then you can always just pick up your phone and pretend you're talking to someone on your phone, even though you're just talking to yourself. Tip number 7, one of my favorites, a daily recap. At the end of your day, you can simply summarize your day. And by doing that, you force yourself to think in English, think of different verb tenses, different vocabulary that you need to summarize your day. You can also talk about the best part of your day, 3 things you're grateful for, any areas for improvement today. That could force you to think of some interesting vocabulary and grammatical structures as well. And you can also plan your day for tomorrow. So these are all the different things you can do for tip number 7. Now for tip number 7, You can think in your head. You can think about 3 things you're grateful for. You can also speak them out loud. You can verbalize the best part of your day. Even if nobody is there to listen to it, that doesn't matter. Now, you can also keep a journal, which forces you to write all of this information down. My recommendation is that you schedule 10 minutes in your day before you go to bed to write in your journal, to write about your day. And finally, tip number 8, be patient. This is so important because many students, they try these tips once or twice. They get frustrated because they don't get instant results, and then they quit or say, I'll never learn English, I'll never become fluent. But the reality is that they weren't patient enough to get the result. So let's imagine that you improve your ability to think in English by 1% each day. 1%, that's not very much, right? But at the end of the year, how much of an improvement would that be? 365% improvement. That's pretty amazing, right? So small improvements absolutely matter. Getting better by 1% each day matters. You will not notice any results after 1 day of following this advice. You will notice some results after 30 days of consistently following this advice. You will notice good results after 60 days, and great results after 90 days, and incredible results after 365 days. So you just need to be patient. So put in the comments, I'm committed 1% better each day. I'm committed, put that in the comments. Amazing job with this masterclass. Did you enjoy this lesson? Do you want me to make more masterclasses? If you do, then put more IELTS in the comments below. And you can get this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can click here to download it or look for the link in the description. And you can keep improving your English with this lesson right now.